Hey, it's Patrick, and today I'm going to show you how to put a set of Koso digital gauges on your 15 and later Road Glide. This is going to give us a much more updated look. It's going to get rid of that analog setup, give us a choice to either run one of 8 colors. It's going to give us options for things like shift lights. It's going to get rid of our voltmeter, which will move down into our main dash area and show us our engine temp in real time. So a lot of options, a lot of upgrades. You can see we have our tank off of here and we have our outer fairing off. The tank's off just because we're doing other work on the bike. That isn't necessary, but you will need to remove your outer fairing. If you don't know how to do that, we'll throw a link in the description to show you how to do exactly that. We're also going to put the tools down there so you can see all the tools you'll need to do this. Like I said, this is being done on a Road Glide. This is a 2018. It's going to be the same for all the Road Glides 15 up through the Milwaukee-Eight years. All right, let's get a T25 Torx and get started pulling out our gauges. So we're going to start by taking our 2 smallest gauges out, our fuel gauge and our current voltmeter. We also have to unplug that plug out of the back. If you have some sort of little pick or screwdriver, that's going to be handy. There's 3 screws in there and they take a T25. The bottom screw is going to be difficult. I recommend doing that one first. Now for the top 2. While these 2 top ones are in there, you're going to need some extensions. I have a 10-inch and a 2-inch. The 10-inch is good for the top 2. You're going to need probably the 10 and the 2 for the bottom one. Also, doesn't hurt to throw something on top of your fender here because a good chance you're going to drop something on top of it while you're trying to get that in and out. Once you get those out of there, unplugged and all that good stuff, bam, it's just that easy. You're gonna need to reuse the gauge pods. We're gonna use new gauges, but use the old gauge pods. We're gonna get our T25 with our super long setup and get to work. Right now, I'm trying to save this screw. If you're having trouble getting that gauge out of there, you might have to take a 3/16 Allen, pull these out of this speaker pod. It'll allow it to flex over a little bit. It'll give you a little more room to pull that gauge out of there. There we go, folks. So now we need to put our new gauges into our pod. What holds them in there is this little bezel piece around there. You need a little pick or something, push up on it, and we'll pop that bezel off there. Also, you don't really have to worry about getting these clocked upside down because there's gonna be a little tab that'll fit in that slot to make sure it's facing the right direction. All you have to do is read on the back of the gauge which one goes where. So we have the fuel gauge here. We're gonna replace our fuel gauge here. Now we can put it back in the bike. Don't forget to plug these in before you move away from this area. I'm also gonna go ahead and put our screws back into our speaker pod that we loosened up to move over so we don't forget all that later on down the road.
Stay in school, kids.
So now we're down to our main 2 gauges, our tach and our speedo. Now to get those out, we have to remove our ignition switch. After we do that, we're gonna take a T25, take a screw out on each side of this pod, pull it out, unplug the gauge, take a couple more T25s out, and then we can swap them out. Before we do that, I'm gonna show you how to do this ignition setup. You're going to need your key and probably a little flat blade screwdriver. Turn your ignition all the way over to the side here so the lock is closest to the tach. We're gonna put the key in, and there's a little tab under the ignition we're gonna hit with a screwdriver. And when we do that, we're gonna twist our key and the whole thing will pop out. There's that tab right there that you gotta press. And there's a spring in there you don't wanna lose. Now, if you do this and take this ignition out, it's important that you don't mess with the other part of the ignition, your fork lock, or turn your handlebars or anything, because that will get it out of alignment and cause you some problems. When you're doing this, make sure everything stays the way it is and nothing gets moved. Okay, now that we have our gauges out, we need to go do the same thing we did before. We're gonna have to go swap these out in this bezel over at the bench. You also want to retain these little rubber isolators. We're gonna use these in the new set of gauges. So the little silver trim pieces are just gonna pull off there. We are going to reuse them. They're gonna go back into the factory pod. We're gonna lay them right in there when we put the gauges in. We need to take these little brass and rubber isolators out of here and put them on our new gauge set in order to mount them. They should just pull right off and press right back in. So this should be pretty easy. We're gonna take our trim pieces, drop them in, put our gauges in, our 3 T25 screws, plug our gauge back in, put our pod back together with our 2 T25 screws, one on each side, and then we'll get to our ignition. While we're in here, you probably will notice there's another white plug. What that's for is if you're using the oil temp sensor. It's optional. We are not using that, so we're not going to plug anything into that. If you're using the temp sensor, now's the time to plug it in. So now we need to put our ignition back in, which is pretty simple. You just put it back in the way it came out, turn it, everything will click into place. From there, we need to hook our battery cable back up, our negative, and that's going to allow us to power everything up. Now we need to talk about some setup. There's a few things. There's a ton of options on these gauges. We won't go through them all because that's going to be personal preference. There is one we need to address. That's the odometer. It's going to be all zeros. And if you ride your motorcycle, once you have this ready to go, it'll start from 0. This particular bike has 100,000 miles on it. Yes, it's a Harley with 100,000 miles. It's only like 4 or 5 engines. Just one engine. But the gentleman would like to keep his miles on there. He's proud of them. So we'll show you how to set that up to put your mileage in if you want to transfer your mileage over. Okay, we're gonna show you how to get to the menu system and how to get to your odometer and get that pulled in off the ECM. From there, if you're in that menu system, you can use the same technique to make all kinds of changes. First thing you wanna do is turn your ignition on. But over here on the bar, you wanna have your run stop switch to off. Once you get that, you hold both turn signal buttons for 3 seconds and your speedo should start to blink with the menu settings. Right there, we're on menu 1. The trigger on your left switch housing will scroll you through. And we're gonna go to 9 right now, which is our odometer. Once you get there, hold that trigger for 3 seconds. It will take you into the submenus. What we did was we went into submenu 2, which pulls the odometer off the ECM because that's what we want. If you go to submenu 3, you can actually set your own odometer, which is what we don't want to do. From there, you can make all kinds of changes on your motorcycle and customize it to exactly how you want. If you're looking for more information on any of this system, go ahead and click on that info tab on your desktop or mobile device. That'll take you to the product detail page where you can read other riders' reviews and more specs about these gauges. If you're still looking for more information, feel free to reach out to our customer service team. They would love to talk to you about what works best for you, your motorcycle, and your budget. I am Patrick. Thank you for watching. Now go work on those motorcycles.